Thank you very much, Martin. Can you all hear me okay?
We can hear you perfect. Thanks, Lucy.
Great, thank you. Well, firstly, thank you very much, Martin and Ross and Lorraine and Des and all the team there for the opportunity to update you on what we're doing here in Tallaght University Hospital. And I think what Fernando said was spot on, that it's really important that we collaborate, and actually that's how we learn, and we learn faster. And I think in the current climate, that's important. So Tallaght University Hospital launched its 5-year strategic plan at the end of last year, at the end of my first year as CEO here in the hospital. And I suppose we have 6 priority areas, all of which are designed to improve access for our patients, because we feel it doesn't matter how good a service you provide if you can't access us in a timely fashion. And really, I suppose what I want to focus on here is the fact that we actually have research and innovation as one of our core pillars. And I think that's, again, just reflects the vision of the hospital, which is people caring for people to live better lives. And we feel that behind innovation, it has to add value to what we do. And we also have digital enablement there as well. But for the purpose of this, I'll focus on our innovation strategy. So as Martin said, we opened up our innovation hub at the end of last year. It's bang in the middle of our main atrium. And the reason it's there is to actually give, I suppose, the emphasis on innovation, so that it's in everyone's mind that all of us are innovators. It's not confined to the few, but we have established an innovation framework, because I think it's important, if you're putting your hand up and say we want to partner with industry, particularly in the medtech area, you have to make sure that you're doing it in a structured way, that you're actually also delivering on your end of the bargain. So from that point of view, we have a framework developed, and we are actually going to the market on Wednesday. So please search our website and Twitter and LinkedIn for our innovation manager. We are very lucky that the Meath Foundation here in the hospital has funded this post for 2 years. And again, we feel that it'll show its worth, and then we'll be able to progress that on a more permanent basis. But really, the idea Tallaght University Hospital's presentation here today is just to highlight a few of the things that we're doing through the Living Lab in conjunction with the HSE. The first thing there, the vital signs automation, I'm going to skim through, because I think our colleagues in Cavan are ahead of us. We're only a pilot site, they're a demonstrator site, so I'll skim over that. I'll update you on single sign-on, and then I'm going to hand over to my colleague David Wall, who is the Director of ICT and really is the driver behind many of these developments, to talk to you about a project we're doing in relation to chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, and then some of the things that we've developed during COVID. And as Martin said, while COVID has been a challenge, it has also been an enabler and unlocker of things that, let's be honest, previously would have taken years to get off the ground, are being done in weeks and months. Let's be honest, clear, great. And then finally, I'm going to hand over to my colleague, Dr. Dan Ryan, regarding a project we've done in relation to the use of artificial intelligence and stroke. And I think, again, it goes back to the whole collaboration. It's between us as corporate management, between our clinicians, because together we can achieve much. So in relation to the vital signs automation, I'm not going to dwell on it in the interest of time, but also because I think Cavan probably have more to say in this regard. But the reason I suppose that we're interested in this project is that it's shown, obviously, normally it takes about 7 minutes for a nurse to take observations from a patient, and the time can be dramatically shortened by capturing it electronically. And then obviously the early warning score can then be calculated and represented digitally. But I suppose really why we're interested is that obviously it means that you can take earlier decisions in patient care and hopefully get a higher standard of care. It's been demonstrated to reduce the average length of stay of patients, and it releases time back to patient care, which I think is really important. Our nurses are very stretched, and if this releases some of their time to actually give back into direct patient care, that can only be supported. An early indication for us, for example, if we were to we're looking at piloting it in our acute medical unit, and as a minimum, if the nurses are taking 4 sets of obs a day, which would be very few, it was still equivalent to a 1 whole time equivalent nurse, based on the savings of time. It also eliminates charting and scoring errors, which again is very important, and as I say, hopefully escalates the deteriorating patient earlier. But as I say, in the interest of time, I'm going to skip over the next slide and bring you on to single sign-on. So basically, this was funded by the Mead Foundation, and basically we chose 4 different areas of the hospital to pilot. So that's our AMU, our age-related health services, our oncology day unit, and endocrinology outpatients. And basically what it is we're looking at, well, currently previously rather, the staff were accessing 17 different IT applications, and that was across our PCs and thin clients. Basically, it was very frustrating for them. Because they had to log into one system, come out of that, log into another system. So again, even at ward level, as I'm sure in many areas around the country, there's might be only 2 PCs, and you're queuing to try and get onto it. So basically, we looked at rolling it out over our PCs and thin clients and integrating with our Active Directory. And it's compatible with our staff ID cards. So basically, you tap or fingerprint swipe onto the software. It brings you straight into the clinical applications without having to go in and out of them individually. So what did we find when we did that? Well, basically, it released time to care for clinicals, nursing and HSE staff. During the initial pilot phase, it showed to reduce, or to save rather, approximately 58 minutes per day per staff member in our AMAU and 46 minutes in our oncology ward. We had very positive feedback. People really felt it just, everyone has very busy work lives. They can get very frustrated, but also actually people felt it was much safer, that they were getting access to information quicker. They felt it was more secure from an information governance perspective, and have been very happy with it. The pilot actually received an Improvata Clinical Excellence Award for the pilot at their annual user conference. And now that following on from the successful pilot, we're now moving on, obviously, to develop a national framework for the single sign-on in conjunction with the HSE, and we'll be going to phase 1 of a mini competition. And again, I suppose it's showing the real life value of doing a pilot and then moving on to actually rolling it out further. I'm going to hand over to David just regarding our next project, which we're doing with the Small Business Innovation Research.
Okay, can you hear me? Yeah. Can you hear me? Okay, so our next one is about COPD. I am Ross. Am I unmuted? Yes. So the next one is our Small Business Innovation Research. So this is jointly funded between Enterprise Ireland, Tallaght University, and the HSE, and it's all around a COPD digital solution. So what we're looking for is an incentivized solution aimed at empowering and improving patients who are living in the community with COPD. So some stats around that: approximately 110,000 people in Ireland are diagnosed with COPD, and approximately 250,000 are living with the disease who have not even yet been diagnosed. So while you have the other projects that Martin referenced around the digital spirometer and stuff like that, what we're looking for is as a digital solution to take that, but also add incentivization and gamification, which will empower patients to take ownership of their lifestyle, have healthy eating, have healthy exercise, tell them when they have exercised too much or they're not exercising enough. If they are exercising too much, that they need to take it easier and pull it back a bit, and that they can self-manage their condition and carry out assessments at regular intervals around the CAT and Borg breathlessness scores. It also gives them cues then based on those scores and let them know if they're having an exacerbation. And as I said, if it's safe that they should exercise or they should take things a little bit easier. We also then want to have an education component built into it, so it shows them how to use devices, how to do exercises, and other educational material, and how to clear secretions, for example, from their chest. So the stage we're at the moment is that we've just closed the request for tenders. We have shortlisted the various companies, and we have selected 2 companies to proceed to the next phase 1 trials. So what will happen is we'll take a couple of companies through the phase 1 trials, and then we'll bring them to that stage. And then at the end of that, both companies will be assessed, and 1 company will be selected to move through to phase 2. Next slide, please. Then, as our CEO just said, COVID-19 did present a time of opportunity as well for a lot of hospitals, and particularly around innovation. So 2 of the solutions that we deployed here in the hospital were around video streaming glasses and the use of digital assistants. So previously, RedZync had demonstrated their video streaming glasses at the Digital Academy for use with the ambulance service. So we were aware of that and contacted the company. And what we used the video streaming glasses was providing support for new and redeployed staff. So staff who are new to an area or have been redeployed from another area who may not be familiar from everything to how to find something, where to go, to getting support from more senior members of staff. We reduced the number of staff who had to interact with the patient because one person was able to go in, wear the glasses and relay back what they were seeing to other members of staff. It reduced entry into isolation rooms. We also used the patient safety walkarounds, which were very important during COVID. So normally we would have a patient safety walkaround with a number of the executive and clinical team members. So what we did is we had one, our director of QSRM, walk around, and she was able to relay through the glasses to the other people what she was seeing, and the patient safety walkaround could continue. It also helped reduce the use of PPE. So what you see there, the first picture on the top left, is actually our consultant, Dr. Peter Lavin. And it's being used for renal support out in the Beacon Hospital, where we outsource some of our renal dialysis patients too. So as well as being used on site, we were actually able to use it between the Beacon Hospital and Tallaght University Hospital. We deployed 5 pairs of glasses across ED, AMAU, ICU theatre and quality safety risk. The second initiative was about deploying a hands-free communication system. So in conjunction with Amazon, we deployed 13 echo shows across numerous locations across the hospital. So similar to other hospitals, we had to stand up our secondary ICU and improve our PACU. And again, we had redeployed staff, and also staff were having to do a lot of communication, a lot of discussion. So again, having to doff on, doff off PPE, go in and out of rooms, etc. So what this was allowed to do, very much taking the technology that's very familiar to all of us in our homes, is that we put out 13 echo shows. We gave each one a room, a name, and then all the staff had to do was just call ICU 1, call ICU 2, or drop in on ICU 1 to initiate a conversation. So again, what you see there is a conversation going on between, in the top right-hand corner, Professor Ridgway, our consultant, and some of the staff in ICU. Next slide then is on to Dan. So our next project is on artificial intelligence, and I'll hand that over to Dr. Dan Ryan.
Thank you. Dan Ryan, consultant geriatrician and director of services in Tallaght Hospital. And so I'd just like to present an AI system that we've incorporated with thanks to David Wall, Lorcan Power and Frank Hughes for operationalizing the pilot, and then Lucy for funding the initiative. So in the interest of time, I'm just to present a specific single case to illustrate how this incorporates into clinical practice, albeit we get about 280 of these cases per year, so nearly one a day where this AI can be of benefit. So late August, I was on call for Tallaght and Naas hospitals for acute stroke treatments and decision making. I was in the emergency department seeing a different patient, non-stroke patient, and I was on my way home from Tallaght Hospital, halfway there when I stopped in the shop. I got a text at 12:23 which alerted me that a patient was in the stroke service. This is from this artificial intelligence app called Brainomix. So the Brainomix app on my phone alerted me, firstly, that there was a patient in the emergency department as a FAST scan had been booked, FAST being face, arm and speech. So I've stood like this for time where registrars may try and process patients within the emergency department for up to 30 minutes before they notify the 30-minute consultant regarding a potential acute stroke. To dial the telemedicine, and it can slow the whole process down. So I've never been able to identify a way that I can find out very early whether the patients are available in the department or not, and this has provided me with this system. You can see that the first scan, the time on the first slice is 12:19, and I received text on my phone around 12:23 to say that the scan had been booked, and here was the processed images of those scans. So I was able to phone the medical registrar, and it became apparent that he was still scanning the patient, had scanned his patient's brain and was now giving contrast to scan the vessels, which meant I had enough time to drive back to see the patient. I did assess the patient, and the patient was aphasic. They could understand what I was saying, but when I asked them to speak, they could just say that. They were unable to verbalize anything. So then I went back to look at the CAT scan of the brain, which the radiology registrar had phoned me and felt that the scan was normal, and I pretty much agreed with her. However, I received this Brainomix notification. As I said, I looked on my phone and I looked on the images on the computer. What Brainomix does is identifies 10 different locations within this CAT scan of a brain. You can see them all. I highlighted separately, and it has highlighted 2 areas on the right side. This is flipped right to left. The right side of the brain, the front and middle part of the brain, where it says, I think there's some damage here, and I'm going to score 2 points. So 10 is a maximum normal score. I'm taking 2 points off to say there's 2 bits of damage in this part of the brain. So that helped me look back at the CT brain. On balance, I felt it was probably okay, but there might be something there, and it pointed towards a potential area of damage. The MRI scan, which we subsequently conducted, showed that Brainomix, this white part, is an infarct or stroke. So Brainomix had identified a very subtle area of damage that we hadn't initially detected ourselves. Now, in general, Brainomix is excessively sensitive and can overcall these, but on this occasion, their overcall on was better than ours. Separately then, Brainomix looks at the vessels of the brain, because maybe this damage in this part of the brain that it's highlighting is as a consequence of a blocked blood vessel that can be cleared by thrombectomy in Beaumont, where it pulls the clot out of the brain. A radiologist will, via going into the groin and up into the brain. And so Brainomix very rapidly had identified a possible location for this. It said maybe there's a reduced flow or maybe a blockage of the vessel on this. Again, right flipping to left. So this is the right side of the brain. It's the left side of the brain. This is the main vessel. And it's saying, I think there might be some blockage here. So I went back and looked at the scans myself. So at the time, in real time, this is all happening quite rapidly. As you can imagine, with an acute stroke, you lose 1 day of independent living for every minute you wait. 1 day of independent living for every minute you wait. So there's a vessel there in the brain. If I move down to the next cut, you can see it more clearly. And then the next cut, it's gone. So there to there, it's gone. So it's quite subtle and difficult to pick up. But Brainomix helped me to identify that. I phoned a consultant neuroradiologist who agreed that from there to there, it does look to be cut. Now, that person, the blockage was quite distal, quite far out, and he felt if he went up into the brain with a catheter, he might burst the blood vessel and kill the patient. So he, on balance, felt that it was better just to conservatively treat the patient. But in any case, I think it's a good example of what Brainomix is doing for me. It notified me that a fast patient or a potential stroke patient was in ED immediately, which gave that more time to work with. It picked up the damage on the CT brain that I had struggled initially to see. Again, it's excessively sensitive sometimes. And it picked up a possible blockage of a blood vessel in the brain that was amenable to thrombectomy and pointed me in an area to look at. So it tells me early that this patient there, it improves the speed of our image interpretation and often improves the quality of our image interpretation. And I've used a study has performed in Tallaght has confirmed that. Thank you.